Hey friends, welcome back to No Gallbladder, Now What? The podcast where we dive into the strange but fascinating world of digestion, healing, and how history, science, and sacred texts can help us feel more at home in our bodies again. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that no matter how much you, or maybe even that loved one, brushes their teeth, flosses, or swishes mouthwash, their breath just isn't fresh, or it quickly turns sour? You try the gums, the mints, the even special toothpaste, but the smell keeps creeping back. Well, here's the secret no one tells you. Bad breath often has nothing to do with your mouth. It's about your digestion. And if you've had your gallbladder removed, that connection becomes even stronger. So today we're unpacking how poor digestion leads to bad breath, what's going on under the hood of your gut, and some practical ways you can turn things around. So let's get started.
Gallbladder gone. Now what? Let's heal from the inside out.
Welcome to Gallbladder Gone? Now What? The podcast for Christian women navigating life after gallbladder removal. Hosted by Jami McQuivey, holistic nutritionist, wife, boy mum, grandma, and a firm believer in God's design for lasting health. Did you know that over 1.2 million Americans have their gallbladders removed every year, and that the majority of them are women? Even more eye-opening is that all gallbladder issues are digestive issues. And poor digestion is at the root of up to 80% of all disease, including hormone imbalances and weight struggles. While Jami isn't a doctor and this podcast isn't medical advice, she shares real solutions rooted in research, experience, and God's Word. Let's get practical, biblical, and real, one step at a time.
All right, we're going to get started today with a little bit of the science. So, when your digestion is weak or sluggish, the food you eat doesn't fully break down. So, we can kind of imagine that happening. We're eating, the food's going in, it's just partially digested. So, instead, it sits there and it starts to undergo like this fermentation process or worse, putrefaction. So in this gastrointestinal tract, right? And so the body's job is to absorb this. So when we send something down and it gets all nasty and putrefying, and the body starts to absorb it, right? So the process creates smelly byproducts. And the did not to be impolite here, but it is rising up from your gut to affect your breath. And it's really, really not a beautiful picture when you start to understand what's going on. So, ancient Ayurveda gave this name of this stuff thousands of years ago. They call it ama. And so, ama is that sticky, toxic residue left behind when food doesn't get digested properly. So, what a lot of people are doing when they're, quote, trying to, quote, detox, is they're trying to get rid of this ama. The ama is something that makes us tired, it creates disease, and it's sticky and smelly and kind of gross. And this is so and one of the signs is bad breath. So, since the topic of vama can get a little bit sticky, pun intended, I like to focus on simple, practical ways to help the body sweep those toxins out and feel lighter again. And this is a big theme inside my course because, we can keep eating the good foods, but again, if we're not digesting them properly and breaking them down, they're kind of sitting there and it ferments, and now we have some backups, maybe toxic, that because it's sticky, it sticks behind, so it can like start to store itself in our organs and stuff, and we do not want any of that. We want this stuff cleaned and moved along. So there's a way that you can actually test yourself to see if you have ama. This is one of the easier ways. It doesn't give us a full picture, but it gives us a really good picture. So, first thing in the morning, before you take a drink, before you brush your teeth, anything, go to the mirror and stick your tongue way out. And if you look at the back portion and it's coated, that's a sign of ama. That's a sign of digestive stagnation. And so we want to make sure we, take care of this right away. And Well, that's actually when I'm doing this, I do this every single morning. And it kind of sets the tone for what my day is going to look like. So I might go, "Ooh, today is," if I have some ama going on, then I know today might be a day to fast or to eat lighter. Or, but if it's really good, I'm like, "Oh, today's going to be a good day." Don't necessarily have to watch my foods. I can have some of the heavier meals. And so it kind of gives me this out of the gate how my day's going to start. Also with what I'm going to drink, right? So every morning I usually start with a big glass of warm water with lemon and a little bit of salt. That's great. But sometimes if I have that ama, then I might mix it with ginger, or I may actually go over to the CCFT, which is what we'll talk about in a minute. But there's things that we can do. So now from a modern perspective, doctors would say this coating is partially bacterial buildup. So it's partially undigested proteins. And yes, these proteins release sulfur compounds that smell like rotten eggs. So it doesn't matter how you look at it or how you frame it, bad digestion equals bad breath. So, in kind of a visual, I want to give you is that poor digestion is kind of like the kitchen sink that isn't draining properly. It's draining really, really slow. So, you have all this foodstuffs that go in there, and instead of the water flowing smoothly and getting out of the sink, it starts to kind of back up and get stagnant and smell kind of funky. So the same thing happens in our gut. When food isn't digested well, it's kind of sitting there, it's kind of fermenting. It starts to give off odors, and those odors show up as bad breath. It also shows up as body odor, which is interesting. And I will be doing a podcast on that. So look for that because when you have a really clean body, you don't have bad breath. You don't have body odor. You don't have bad smelling bowel movements, those type of things. These are all signs that we can look at. All right. So where does the gallbladder fit into this? So gallbladder and removal and also sluggishness makes this worse. So again, even those who have a gallbladder, their gallbladder can be sluggish, and it starts to have these same problems of those of us who before we got our gallbladder out. So if we can actually catch this, that's even better. But some of us, we've already gotten it out. So now we need to really make sure that we're working well with it. So without the gallbladder, bile doesn't get stored and concentrated the way it used to when it was working wonderfully and we were happy and healthy and feeling good. So instead, the liver creates the bile and it just drips a weaker version of bile into the small intestines all day long. So the gallbladder usually would take that drip and it would concentrate it 5 to 10 times, not percent, but 5 to 10 times in the gallbladder. So now we don't have that. We kind of have this drip system. And so when fats hang around too long, digestion slows down and fermentation and putrefaction go up. And so I've had plenty of conversations where people will come talk to me privately and say things like, "I don't understand. My dentist says my teeth are fine, but I still have bad breath. I'm doing these things." And so I said we need to dig a little bit deeper because the problem isn't necessarily your teeth. Now, we do need to be brushing our teeth and flossing, and we'll talk about that. But when we have halitosis or long-term bad breath, that's where we're kind of getting into a chronic area here. And so one client, I'll call her Maya, had this exact problem. And so she said she'd always be chewing gum, and when she was at work and she didn't like talking close to people, she brushed twice a day, she flossed, she even did the tongue scraping, but nothing seemed to work. So when we started working together, we focused not just on her oral hygiene, we added a few things because there are some things that we can add. But we got her digestive fire kindled again. And so it's kind of a multifaceted part. So we have to, good foods going in, right? And then when they're in there, we want that digestive fire to be nice and hot. Then with that, we want to be able to get the toxins moving as well. So it's multifaceted. So we begin by doing things that I'm going to tell you in just a minute, some of the things that we worked on. There was about 6 things. So after we worked on all of this, within a few weeks, she told me, I feel like I can breathe again and I'm not worried. But she wasn't worried about her breath, and she could lean in and hug her kids and talk to coworkers and whisper, right? So she wasn't embarrassed anymore. And that's how important and powerful working with digestion can be. So, what are some of the things I worked with her on? So, getting practical, having those tools is what can you do if you suspect your bad breath is actually a digestive issue? So, here are a few simple, powerful steps. Now, remember, these are just the beginning steps. So, if there's something going on deeper, which oftentimes there are, please make an appointment with me. There's links in the bio or by my if you purchase the program, we can get all the support you need. All right. So the first thing we did was we lightened up her meals. And again, for those of us who have maybe leaned towards more sluggish digestion or yeah, just things aren't moving very well, heavy, greasy, dairy, heavy meals are going to be tough, especially if we don't have a gallbladder. It's just going to be tougher on us. So lighter foods, easier to digest foods, and that doesn't mean forever, right? And so it's one of those things I like to think most of the time have um, amazing, light, delicious meals. And then every once in a while you can go out for pizza. It's not a big deal, but your body can more easily manage it. The other thing we talked about was with her drinks. So this is something that is kind of like a hill I will die on, which is getting rid of cold things, cold, heavy, wet things in our diet. So that looks like cold drinks. Most of the women I know are drinking with ice in their water. And this is like we go to the gym and you can hear it clinking around, and they stop their exercise and they go over and they drink this cold water. That stops digestion right there in its tracks. And then especially if you're drinking it around meals, it seizes up the bile, and bile doesn't want to release. And so it makes it really hard. The same thing, the heavy, wet, cold is going to be ice cream, cheese, yogurt. They weaken digestion and create more ama. So again, that's not forever or all the time, but it's like every once in a while I go out for ice cream. I do not keep ice cream in the house at all because I know what I would do. I would just eat it. And so, but I'll go out and I'll get a small ice cream. But I also do things to counter that. So that's when I'm taking my digestive herbs before and I'm taking some bitters, and then I go and I enjoy a small ice cream. So we want to stick with warm cooked meals that are easier to digest in the beginning. You know, I talk a lot about we want fresh, we want raw, but when you're really struggling with your digestion, sometimes it's best to back off and kind of have some brothy soups or some blended vegetable soups that kind of give your digestion a break, kind of clear some things out, and then we can bring in some other foods. And I like to go back and forth, maybe a couple of days have something really light and then get back in. It's almost like a mini cleanse or fast, and so that's nice. All right, the next thing we did is we started chewing. I had her chew digestive seeds. I learned about this probably 20 years ago, and I can't remember where I read it, but they called them church seeds. And so the first blend that people do is after lunch and dinner, chew about a teaspoon of roasted fennel and cumin seeds. So this combination is for freshening the breath, supporting the colon, and helps move digestion along. So if you only have fennel, that works fine too. I literally go and buy fennel in bulk. I usually buy a couple pounds at a time because I love fennel. And so it's tasty, it's refreshing, and it's nice. You can also add cardamom seeds. So I like to do this combination of seeds, and I put it in little containers or little baggies, and I'll put them in my bags, in my purse. So when I'm out and about, if I feel like a little snacky, I can just start chewing on these seeds. So cardamom seeds are you slowly chew one or two seeds after a meal, and this will also help aid in digestion and reduce ama or toxin and naturally sweetens the breath. So those are my three that I really am like, oh, make sure that you have those. All right, the next thing we talked about for her was having a half a cup a day of uh, aloe vera juice, and this is short term. This is until that freshness returns. So aloe kind of goes in there and it soothes your gut lining and helps to detoxify the body. And so it's just kind of, and it's nice. It tastes really nice. And so just a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening, as your body's getting back into balance. Now, my next one is that CCFT. I've done a whole podcast on this, and I will put that link in there. But CCFT will is absolutely wonderful in breaking down food and preventing um, fermentation. And we want to make sure that like that's we're drinking that between meals. So when we're doing this, when we're embarking on really helping our digestion, I really emphasize to my clients, this is not forever, but we've got to heal because you got sick before you had your gallbladder out, and then you had surgery. And so then there's more toxins, body's trying to figure stuff out, doesn't know. And then for some of us, it's been I mean, for me, it was 10 to 15 years before I realized what was going on. Some of you may be lucky enough that you're listening to this, you know, a week after surgery or 6 weeks after or a month or whatever. Some of you even a year, but sometimes the longer we've been in this state, the more work we have to do. And so doing these things, putting yourself on like a 3-month protocol, just to see how get things moving will be very beneficial. And then slowly work into different lifestyle habits. Um, the last one I want to talk about is the oral care. And so I absolutely suggest having a tongue scraper. So in the morning, before I do anything, I go look at my tongue, read it. Do I have some ama going on? Or is it nice and clear? And I have to say, when I first started this, there was the tongue coating can be white, it can be yellow. Sometimes people get close to even black. And so those yellow is more of a pitta type ama, white is more of a kapha type ama. Um, and the black is just getting really intense. So we want to make sure, and what those mean is that it's just time to really kind of heat up that fire, that digestive fire, and get that out. So I will look in the mirror, I'll take a look at it, which now, 9 days out of 10, my tongue is very clear. And then I scrape it with my tongue scraper, and we can you can do things like oil pulling, and I'll do a podcast on that. But that's where you just take some coconut oil and swish it in your mouth for 20 minutes. So you'd be amazed what comes off that back portion as you scrape and how much fresher your mouth feels afterwards. So I do this and it helps. It helps so much. All right. So here's what I like to bring in is that sacred perspective, right? So in Matthew 15:11, it says, Jesus actually said, "It is not what goes in the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth." Now we know he was talking about words, but think about this in a physical sense too. What we put in the body must be processed well, or it shows up in ways that we don't like. So, our breath is one of the ways our body tells us the truth about what's happening inside. It's not to shame us, it's to invite us to heal. And I want to talk a little side note of people will have really bad breath when they're fasting, right? And that's because the body is burning that toxin and that ama out. It's detoxifying. So it's not, I don't want to say it's not, it's always bad. Ama in the body we do not want ama in the body. And we want to get it out. But if you've been fasting and you're cleansing and it's part of that ritual, then I wouldn't worry too much. But we're talking about really chronic issues. So I find it so encouraging that ancient wisdom, modern science, and scripture all line up on this. Clear out what doesn't belong, strengthen what is weak, and your body will thank you. And now, if you've been nodding along or thinking, I know that person, or I've experienced this, or this is me, I've been fighting bad breath, poor digestion since my gallbladder came out, or, I know like I've had close friends who struggled with it and they're really embarrassed. It's something they feel embarrassed about, but I want to share with you that there is hope. This is exactly what I help people with inside my program. We go deeper than just eat this or don't eat that. We learn how to stroke that digestive fire, reduce ama, and finally feel fresh, light, and confident again. I have a link in the show notes, and I would love for you to click on that and learn and get your body back to where you're feeling great. The takeaway here today is that if your breath is off, don't just reach for gum or mints or be embarrassed. Check your digestion. Look at your tongue. Ask yourself, am I eating the foods my body can handle right now, or am I dampening that fire? Sometimes we just kind of need to back off for a little bit, let that fire start to roar again, and then we can start eating different foods. So remember that bad breath is not the enemy. It's just a messenger. It's a symptom. We don't want to just quiet the symptom. We want to fix the problem. And when you listen, your body will guide you back to better digestion and better health. So thank you for joining me today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend who needs some encouragement on their healing journey. Whether they have their gallbladder or not, all this information will help people feel better. And make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode. Happy digesting.
If this episode encouraged you or offered practical insight, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Leaving a review, subscribing, and sharing with even one friend helps more people discover this message, and Jami is truly grateful for your support. Be sure to check the show notes for free downloads, helpful resources, and a link to join Jami's private Facebook group for extra support and community that blends practical health with biblical truth. Just a reminder, Jami isn't a doctor, so always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health plan.